Hello and welcome to the Philosophy Open Day, the virtual Open Day for Philosophy at Newcastle. Sorry we can't be in a building doing this, but hopefully the virtual Open Day is going to give you a good sense of what philosophy is like at Newcastle. So my name's Adam Potts. I'm a lecturer in philosophy here at Newcastle, and I'm also the current degree program director. What I'm going to do in this video is give you basically the subject talk. So I'm going to give you a sense of what philosophy means for us here at Newcastle, how we teach philosophy, what's unique about philosophy at Newcastle, and give you a bit of a sense of what the experience has been like for some of our students. You can also see on the slide in front of you here, we've got a number of web links that you can visit. So we've got our website where you can see the staff who teach on the program and their research interest and specialism. We've also got a blog, we've got a Facebook, and we've got a Twitter page. So if you're on those platforms and you want to engage with us there, feel free. So I'd like to begin by looking at this quote by William James. So William James was an American philosopher who taught pragmatism. He came up with this, well, along with another philosopher, Dewey, came up with this philosophy of pragmatism. And when he was delivering his lectures on pragmatism, he said the following quote, and I want to read this as a way of getting us to start thinking about what philosophy does do. So he says this, he says, "I wish I had saved the first couple of pages of a thesis which a student handed me a year or two ago. This young man, who was a graduate student of some Western college, began by saying that he had always taken for granted that when you entered a philosophical classroom, you had open relations with a universe entirely distinct from the one you left behind on the street. The two were supposed," he said, to have little to do with each other, that you could not possibly occupy your mind with them at the same time." Now, William James isn't saying this because he champions this kind of view. What William James is reading here, why he's telling his audience this in his lecture, is that he's trying to raise a common misconception about philosophy. And that's the idea that philosophy is somehow disconnected from the real world. The world, as he says here, out there on the street. That philosophy is this kind of abstract, ivory tower, detached discipline. James moves from this to show how this is an incorrect understanding of philosophy. And I wanted to read this here to position us in a similar way to James. Because what I want to say and what I want to show you in this talk today is that philosophy does have something to say about the life we live, about the world on the street, that world you inhabit every day. And Newcastle philosophy program, the Philosophy at Newcastle, gives you an opportunity to apply that, to act in that way. In other words, you're going to have an opportunity here to apply the philosophical things you learn to the things you're interested in, to the life you're living, and life out there beyond the university walls. So what is philosophy at Newcastle? Well, these are 5 fundamental things that you'll get by studying with us and things you'll be doing. So you're going to read and you're going to understand some key historical philosophers and answers to historical philosophical questions. Number 2, you're going to look at traditional arguments and debates in the abstract. So you're going to learn the theories in and of themselves. And I'm going to show you our module offering in a minute, and you'll see that we go all the way back to the pre-Socratics, so before Socrates, before Plato, and then we go all the way through to really contemporary debates in philosophy as well. You're going to engage, number 3, so you're going to engage with the major issues currently at the frontiers of philosophical debate and research. So as I've just said, we don't just focus on kind of classical philosophy here. You're going to look at some key contemporary philosophical debates and issues. Number 4, what our department specialises in is European philosophy, often referred to as continental philosophy and modern European philosophy. So this is essentially philosophy from Descartes onwards, with particular emphasis on 20th century thinkers, French thinkers, and Italian thought, and German thought. So very European offering, and this is where the staff specialism rests as well. So this is what we focus on. But we're also moving towards decolonizing that curriculum. So we've just introduced a module that'll be running next year in stage 3 on world philosophies as well. So you will get some sense of philosophy outside of that Western canon. But our specialism is really modern European philosophy. And finally, you're going to be given the opportunity to apply philosophy to the life you're living and the life you're going to live. So going back to that William James quote, you're not just going to sit with, and it's not just going to end at the point where you've learned the theories in the abstract. Once you've learned them, you're going to have this opportunity to apply them to life beyond the university and to things beyond philosophy. And I'm going to show you how you'll be doing that in a moment. So there's different types of modules at Newcastle, Newcastle University, and other universities have similar structures to this, but it's the personalised project that makes us different, which I'll come to in a moment. But firstly, as a philosophy student, there's core compulsory modules that you have to take. So these are the modules that ensure you get the fundamental ideas and the fundamental elements of the curriculum that allow you to graduate with a philosophy degree. So there's core modules that you have to take, compulsory modules. You also get an opportunity to take optional modules every year. Now, every undergraduate student has to take 120 credits of modules a year. Now, credits are just a way in which we weight a certain module. The standard module at Newcastle University is weighted at about 20 credits. There's also smaller modules at about 10 credits as well. We have a range of those different things. So picking 20 and 10 credit modules, you have to make up 120 credits. Out of those 120 credits, you get 40 credits that are optional. Now that means if you like another subject, you could potentially take some modules in that subject outside of philosophy. However, if you're just interested in philosophy and you just really want to learn as much as you can about philosophy, we offer enough modules so that you don't have to go outside of the degree. So you can just take your optional modules through the ones we offer. Now, what's unique about us and what's different and what's unique about this program is what's in the middle here, this personalized project. The project module is a fundamental part of what you'll be doing in all 3 stages of your degree. In stage 1, this is a 20 credit module. In stage 2 and 3, this is a 40 credit module. And it's through that project module where you get an opportunity to apply philosophy to the things you're interested in, to take the things you've learned from the core modules and maybe from your optional modules and to put them to work in relationship to a thing that you're interested in and you want to explore. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. I just want to show you what our core and optional modules are, and then I'll come to the project module. So as you can see in stage 1 here, so it's labelled year 1, the compulsory modules are philosophy of religion, critical reasoning, rationalism and empiricism, and introduction to moral philosophy. So they're the core things that you have to be covering here. What these modules do, so rationalism, empiricism give you the key debates between the rationalists, the people who believe that true knowledge is found in our ideas and our thinking, and the empiricists like Hume who think we have to go out and measure and test things and see things with our own senses to know whether they're true. So you'll learn about key debates within that. Introduction to moral philosophy will give you a fundamental framing to some of the key aspects of ethics, which is a fundamental branch of philosophy. Critical reasoning will take you through some fundamental debates in philosophy, looking a little bit at some analytic issues that come up as well, so philosophies of how we construct a logical argument, what constitutes a good argument in philosophy. In philosophy and religion, you'll be thinking about the intersection of philosophy with theology, so arguments for the existence of God, arguments against the existence of God, and those key debates in that field. In the optional modules, so the top one here, How I Should Live, is a module that's actually offered by classics outside of philosophy, and that'll give you an introduction to some of the ancient philosophical thinkers, but we actually have 2 of our own modules that do this. So Ancient Philosophy 1, this goes all the way to the pre-Socratic, so the philosophers before Socrates and Plato, the likes of Parmenides and Heraclitus. and then all the way through to Plato. So you look at some of Plato's arguments about the existence of the forms, the allegory of the cave, things like this. And ancient philosophy 2 there looks at Aristotle and beyond. So in those modules you will get a fundamental grasp of ancient philosophy, ultimately where it all began in Western philosophy. And another optional module there which you can take is Existentialism and the Self. This is a module I've taught for many years now, and in that we'll think about the question of existence, the crisis of meaning. We'll look at people like Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, all of these classic existential thinkers. So they're your compulsory and optional modules, and as you can see there, you've got the project module on the right, which you have to take in stage 1 as well, and I'll come to that in a moment. In stages 2, you see here we start moving towards later philosophical frameworks, kind of 18th, 19th century thinkers. So we'll look at Kant. There's a full module on Kant that will give you a fundamental understanding of Kant's critical philosophy. You'll also get a module on post-Kantian philosophy looking at materialism, so some of the responses to Kant, and then a continuation of thinking about ethics, because ethics is a fundamental branch of philosophy, thinking about what's right and wrong and ethical theories that allows us to judge correctly about what the correct mode of action is. So we'll continue that. And in the optional modules here, you've got a range of different things. So you've got a module called Conscious Art and Technology that looks at largely 20th century and 21st century experimental art practices and what happens to art as technology advances through the 20th century. You also get an option to continue some Kantian philosophy by looking at post-Kantian philosophy of idealism. People like Hegel and things like this continued in this module. There's a module here on Italian thought, so we have a number of lecturers here like Lorenzo Chiesa and Michael Lewis, who are specialists in Italian thought, so you look at some key Italian thinkers there. And then you've got modules philosophy and science, which will look at this again, this intersection between philosophy, empiricism, measurement, and how we arrive at truth. And feminist philosophy as well, that look at key debates in feminist philosophy which challenge this kind of male-dominated view of philosophy. And again, you can see the stage 2 project sitting there as well. I'll come to in a moment. And in stage 3, again, you can see a range of different modules here. So here there's modules on phenomenology, which is a key shift in philosophy that happens in the 20th century. People like Martin Heidegger, Edmund Husserl, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, all of these key thinkers who start working in this area called phenomenology. There's a lot of political philosophy modules there, so you'll be thinking again about philosophy in this intersection of political thought and potentially ethics. And then in your optional modules, there's a module on music and philosophy, world philosophy, so understanding and recognizing that what some of the key issues in philosophy are outside of this Western canon. So this effort to decolonize the curriculum and think about different perspectives and different worldviews. And this module here, philosophy and psychoanalysis. Again, this intersection between philosophy and psychoanalysis is a specialism of a number of our staff. Stephen Overy, Lorenzo Chiesa, 2 people who teach you, think about Freud, Lacan, and that intersection of philosophy and these types of things. So as you can see here from these modules, in the compulsory, what you're getting here is this kind of history of ideas all the way back to ancient philosophy and all the way through to 20th, 21st century thought. And your optional modules here don't necessarily follow that historical timeline. In existentialism and the self in year 1, for instance, you will look at 20th century thinkers, even though that's kind of with the compulsory modules, you'd be starting in ancient philosophy, you're looking at more contemporary things. So you cover a range of things and issues in the optional modules as well that don't necessarily follow that historical timeline, but introduce you to a range of ideas in different ways. So I believe our curriculum is very rich, very interesting, very diverse, and also gives you a bit of a framework for recognizing how philosophy starts speaking to other disciplines as well. So I haven't really said much about the project modules here, but as you can see that you do this project module in all 3 stages. So let me say a little bit about what this project module is and how it differs in the different stages. So our project module is based on what we call object-based learning. So what we ask you to do in the project module, so I'll tell you what it is in essence, and then I'll tell you how you're introduced to this process. So we ask you to identify an object of interest. Now we understand this notion of an object very broadly. So this object could be a book that you're interested in, a novel. It could be a political issue that you're interested in. So a number of students recently, one student of mine was thinking about the financial divide between North and South that seems to have accelerated during the pandemic. This was an object they were looking at. The object could be sport if you're interested in. It's basically something that you're interested in, a field of interest and a case study within that field that you can go out and explore and research and gain knowledge about. Once you've done that, once you've gathered some knowledge and information about your object, you're then asked to think about what philosophical ideas that you've studied on the course might be relevant to this object. So how can the philosophy you've learned help you unpack or think about this object in new and interesting ways? And then what you'll do is you'll start piecing these things together, and you work towards producing essentially a dissertation on this issue, on this thing that you came up with. Now, the way in which you're introduced, the way in which this works is this is student-led, student-owned, and you essentially drive it. But that doesn't mean you're out there on your own just doing these projects. So the projects work essentially by weekly meetings. So when you join the university, you'll be assigned a personal tutor who's also your project tutor. In semester 1 of the first year, to get a sense of how the projects work and working towards this object-based learning, you'll work within groups, and you'll be an entire year group, but you'll work within small groups within the year group, and it'll be facilitated by either me or another colleague. And we'll meet weekly, and as your groups, you'll go through this process of identifying an object as a group, and you'll think about what philosophical issues the object relates to, and you'll produce a video that explains what your mini project was on. And this gives you a sense of what it means, of working kind of backwards to philosophy, picking something outside of philosophy, then thinking about how philosophy might be relevant to it. This gives you a fundamental grounding in the methodology of the project learning. Now after that, as we move into semester 2, so this is after January, as we move into the second part of the year, we break off into small groups with your project leader, and the small groups are about no more than 10. And your project leader will be a full-time member of staff. And as your groups, you'll meet on a weekly basis. And in those groups, you'll start working on your own individual projects. Now in these sessions, so I'm thinking about my project sessions, I don't give you the object. The object's something you identify. But what I do as a project leader is I kind of steer you in the right direction. I give you a sense of whether you're aiming too broadly for your project, how you might refine it, what issues might be relevant, and suggest some philosophical concepts and ideas that might help. But ultimately, you drive this, you pick it. Now in stage 1, that in semester 2, you'll produce a 3,500 word written piece of work on that. That'll be your project in stage 1, and some mini assessments around that, a little written piece in January, and a small presentation that makes up 5% of the mark as well. In stage 2 and 3, we start meeting as our group in semester 1, and you're working towards a 7,000 word dissertation in both of those years. And in stage 2 and 3, the project's worth 40 credits, so it's a third of your mark. So in other words, what's unique about our degree is at the center of it is this project module, where you're asked to think about something you're interested in, an object, and you're asked to go out and find out about it, go research it. And then you're going to be encouraged and supervised in thinking about what philosophy can do to help you understand that object differently. So by the end of it, you produce this really unique thing where you've applied philosophy to something that you're really interested in. And where this becomes really relevant is that in third year in particular, you can start thinking about how you might make the project work for your future career. So for example, the other year I had a student who wanted to be a teacher. So what they were doing is they couldn't go into schools, but they were organising Zoom meetings with teachers and things like that to get a sense of how teachers were working. And they did this fantastic project on the history of education and the understanding of education and the history of Western philosophy. Now this meant when they went for a PGCE and applied for these different positions, I was able to talk about this in the reference, and they were able to talk about it in the interview. They were able to say that I didn't just learn about Kant or Hegel, I learned how to apply Kant and Hegel to the thing I'm interested in. So again, learning how philosophy can apply to the areas that you're interested in. What it also gives you as well is this real motivation. When you're working on something that you care about, that you're co-creating, that you're designing, you know, it's a really stimulating process. You can really make philosophy work for you here. And again, thinking back to what I said about William James, this is about using philosophy to think about life on the street and how you live. But like I say, you can gear this towards a future career. So this is what the project module is, and as I say, it sits in the kind of center of our degree program in every year. And it's a fundamental part of what we do, and it's something students really love. So as I say, you're not just left to your own devices on this. You have a dedicated supervisor who's with you, and your supervisor is your project supervisor for the whole 3 years, and also your personal tutor as well. So you get a really close relationship to your personal tutor and your project tutor, and you're very familiar with them over the course of the degree. And these, as I say, these are just the elements of some of the submissions, but ultimately you're working towards an extended essay. And I'll just say now, in terms of the extended essay, in terms of our assessment, all of our assessment for our modules are essay-based, or extended essays like the project. We don't do any examinations, so we think that philosophy is better assessed when you're taking the time to read things carefully and to produce things in time, rather than cramming things for exam revision. Now, these are just some statistics from some of our national student surveys. I didn't include the ones from last year because the ones from last year reflected some of the, obviously, the disruption around the pandemic and things like that, which is obviously fair, but it didn't really give us an insight into what was working well for our students. So these are ones that were in years, in most recent years, that weren't as disrupted. So you can see the satisfaction of what we're doing. But really what I wanted to highlight here is this comment from our external examiner from 2018, when he said, given that most students who study philosophy will not practice it professionally, the projects, so the project model I was just talking about, are extremely useful in enabling students to see how philosophical ideas and methods are applicable to many areas of life and culture. So again, it gives you this opportunity, our degree really gives you this opportunity to not just learn philosophy in the abstract, but to apply it to the things that you're interested in. And like I say, you closely supervise through that process. So a bit of a sense of our degrees. I mean, the standard degree is the BA Honours in Philosophy. There's also these options of year abroad, which right now are obviously a little bit uncertain, but when things settle and things open up, there are these kind of options as well. But the standard offering here is a 3-year degree in philosophy, and that's working through the different module stages as we've talked about. Here's the entry requirements. So it's a standard offered of AAB this year, and obviously if you don't meet that, there's the kind of pre-clearing process and clearing that can be used. High performance athlete offer, get ABB. Widening participation offer, which is WP there, is a BBB grade. Realising opportunities is BBB or BBC, including completion of the Realising Opportunities programme and making NCL firm choice. Actually, that firm choice thing might be a little bit different this year, but definitely Realising the Opportunities programme. And the partners offer, the partners school, is BBC, and that includes the successful completion of the NCL partner summer school. So if you have any questions about these offers, you can get in touch with me. So what can you do after this? That's always the big question. What does philosophy give you? Well, I hope from where I started with that William James quote and what I've just talked about there in terms of the projects, you get a sense of how this degree could actually be applicable to where you want to go after. Philosophy in the abstract and humanities subjects generally in the abstract don't necessarily lead to a specific career. What they give you are transferable skills. So you learn how to be a critical thinker, you learn how to write, you learn how to communicate, you get opportunities for oral presentations, you learn how to time manage and the general responsibilities that come with managing a degree at Newcastle University create these transferable skills. So philosophy in the abstract doesn't necessarily lead to a specific career unless you want to be an academic, in which case we offer a master's MLit program and we offer PhD opportunities. But because of the project module, you have the opportunity to tailor a huge part of this degree to the things you're interested in. And as I say in stage 3, this often means for a lot of our students that it starts getting tailored towards where you want to be after university. So you can start really using that project module as a platform for making the degree applicable to a career after. So that's what's really unique about what we do, I think. So yeah, I hope that gives you an insight of what philosophy is at Newcastle. As I say, what you're really going to get here is a grounding in key philosophical debates, a range of diverse modules to choose from, and this opportunity to apply philosophy to things you're interested in. I think it's that in particular, our specialism in modern European philosophy and the project module that makes Newcastle a really, really unique program and one that we're all very proud of. So I hope you found that interesting. There's going to be some events later today, some live events that will hopefully be useful. If you've got any questions about this, you can find my contact information on the web page, which I had up before at the start. Feel free to email me if you've got any questions, and I'll clarify things as best I can. But thank you for watching the video, and hopefully you'll choose Newcastle.